Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman here, as always, with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Oh, Tony, I sent you a text at about 6 this morning, figuring out like, hey, when are we going to jump on and record this morning? We got, there's some new guys in the transfer portal. We'll have plenty to talk about this morning. And here we are, like 2 hours later, not talking about exactly what I was expecting to be talking about. Almost, but not exactly.
Almost, but not exactly. Talking, of course, about Kyle McCord hitting the transfer portal. And I I woke up this morning to the sounds of, I don't know, a million Buckeye fans celebrating in my mind because of this. Uh, and not that this is a good thing, bad thing, or whatever. I just know there are some Buckeye fans who view this as a positive. And to me, does this give more context to what Ryan Day was saying yesterday when he was asked about, will you commit to Kyle McCord being your starting quarterback? And to me, it all just at the time just sounded like coach speak. Like, you never want to say, yes, Kyle McCord is definitely my starting quarterback if you also don't want to lose Devin Brown and Lincoln Kienholz, something like that. Like, you didn't even have to ask that about CJ Stroud. And given the way things were ended with Kyle McCord, it's a question that I didn't expect any kind of meaningful answer from, and I think that's what we got at the time. But looking back now, it sure seems like a different answer.
Yeah, I think that what you're seeing this morning in Kyle McCord being in the transfer portal is linked in some way to Kyle McCord not being the guaranteed starter next year. I think that's certainly part of it because Kyle McCord was pretty good this year. Not didn't get Ohio State to where they needed to be, and there were other factors that go into that: the offensive line and the defense and all that kind of stuff. There was that is not games are not solely won or lost by the quarterback, but he did not solely drag them across the finish line to meet any of their goals either. So I think you go back to our show yesterday. I guess it was Kevin and I doing the show from the Woody yesterday after the Ryan Day press conference, and we talked about the fact that we expected an open quarterback competition in the spring because you have three talented quarterbacks in that room. Kyle McCord is a talented quarterback. Devon Brown is a talented quarterback. Lincoln Kienholz is a talented quarterback. When Aaron Nolan shows up, he too will be a talented quarterback. He'll just be a true freshman going against now two guys with more experience, so that's going to be a little bit of an uphill climb. But I think that was sort of the expectation, was that this is not just Kyle McCord was not just going to be the anointed one next year. And so you would have an open quarterback competition. And, with the realities of modern college football, that may be part of the reason we're having this conversation right now.
It is one of those things where I was thinking maybe a week or so ago that Ohio State, the smaller schools have to worry about their starting quarterback leaving to go to a bigger job, a bigger school. Ohio State hasn't really had to worry about somebody having a starter leave yet. Even like when the Marvin Harrison to USC rumors were going on last year or whatever, like it's never really been something that has occurred. And I don't see Kyle McCord leaving for a bigger school because really there aren't necessarily any that that is a significant step up. This is a situation where I see these comments that he was horrible, he was terrible. He wasn't. He finished number 14 nationally in passer rating. That's one spot ahead of Michael Penix, 3 spots ahead of Sam Hartman.
What?
Yeah.
What? That's not no. You must be holding the chart upside down.
Nope. No.
He
11,
was terrible, Tony. I've seen it. I seen it on Twitter.com.
Nope. 11 spots ahead of Jordan Travis, like 18, 14, 15 spots ahead of Shedeur Sanders. What he didn't do was beat Michigan. And then there are just too many of those throws. And I think the low throws, the high throws, the incompletions to open receivers, and also the situations where you saw open receivers running open and Kyle didn't, and some of those are that aren't to the like the guy running open may have been the third look in the progression, and he's still going to throw to the first or second because Marvin Harrison is one of those. So some of those where oh look, he missed it. It's like it never really got to that point because he was looking at his first two reads. But this is a situation where I feel like, Tom, this significantly increases the excitement for Ohio State fans going into next year, certainly going into the bowl game, because I mean we talk to fans all the time about just the feelings on McCord and what this meant for next year if he were to come back. And even if he was coming back, we kept hearing about who are they going to go after in the portal. They've got to go to the portal. It's you got to let Devin Brown, you got to let Lincoln Kienholz give them an opportunity. And I fully believe there is going to be an opportunity for them to compete for the job. And we've said as much on these shows. And now McCord goes off and you're left with Devin Brown and Lincoln Kienholz and Tristen Gebbia for the bowl game and for bowl practice. And we won't talk to Ryan Day until we maybe will get him later next week when we're supposed to get players. I have asked for a comment from Dave for a quote, and we'll see if he says anything about this. But this is a brand new world. And the thing is, the world has finally reached Ohio State. There schools below Ohio State, schools below Ohio State's level have been dealing with this for a couple of years now. This has finally reached Ohio State.
Yeah, and I would guess that Ohio State will not be the only team of that level that that sees something like this happen. That is what is Carson Beck at Georgia. Is Carson Beck going to be he's the bum who lost to Alabama. Does he have any eligibility left? I don't know off the top of my head, but he's the bum who lost to Alabama. So I'm sure they have Dylan Raiola coming in, Tony. He's a 5-star. He's going to be great forever. So therefore, they should run Carson back out of town on a rail and let the true freshman 5-star play because he's going to be perfect immediately. We're going to start running through some super chats real quick. Butch Jones says Will Rogers is in the portal. I'm just saying, he is. I don't suspect that's going to be the direction Ohio State goes, but he does have a bunch of funny and folksy sayings, so there's that.
Will Howard is from Kansas State.
Will Rogers wasn't he Mississippi State or something?
State.
Yeah.
But
Will Howard is not really a fit for what Ryan Day does on offense, right? I mean, I don't know that I've seen any I know Cam Ward. There was lots of talk about Cam Ward. There was people are all excited about Dante Moore. Like, did you watch Dante Moore play this year? Did you, Will Howard? Okay, which one of those guys is materially an upgrade over what Ohio State has right now, even without Kyle McCord, to the point that it's worth potentially risking having your remaining quarterbacks get in the portal and leave? Which of them is a sure enough bet that it's worth risking losing what you got? I don't know that I see that in the portal right now. Mike Farino says, I've been a vocal defender of Kyle, but he 100% did not deserve to have any assurances about remaining the starting quarterback. If he was good enough to deserve those assurances, then he would have been good enough to win the job again. And I think that's all. I think you're going to have 100% agreement from both Tony and I on that. If you were good enough that you didn't need assurances, if you were good enough to deserve to be 100% guaranteed, like C.J. Stroud was a couple of years ago, where C.J. Stroud was clearly, even after the 2021 season, C.J. Stroud was clearly the best option for Ohio State, and it's not an open quarterback competition, and they're not even pretending it's an open quarterback competition. Yeah, I think that is a situation that solves itself. This was not that situation. I think Tony and I both were expecting an open quarterback competition in the spring, because the reality of modern college football is if you don't have an open quarterback competition in the spring, all the guys behind him who were probably told, yeah, you'll have an opportunity to fight for the starting quarterback position, will get told, we'll be in the portal shortly after that. That's just the realities of modern college football. So, if if you're behind CJ Stroud, you're behind CJ Stroud, and that's one thing. Kyle McCord was good this season. He was not great this season. He was not CJ Stroud this season, and so therefore you were going to have an open quarterback competition.
Yeah, and I think this is a very good point with solid logic, but I don't know that we can use logic anymore when it comes to college football and the portal, and especially quarterbacks. Quarterbacks are different than any other position, as we know, and you want it. Hey, it's fine to want assurances, but you need to be at a certain level of play to get those, and when you aren't, to ask for them is, like Joe Burrow asking for an assurance. Hey, am I going to be the starter? We can't tell you that because you both played the same, Dwayne Haskins and Joe Burrow in 2018 in the spring. And when you don't get that assurance, you got to go find it somewhere else. And in this day and age, somebody's going to give you an assurance. It just may not be the team that you're currently on.
Well, and sometimes you can be given an assurance and then, something has changed, and then the assurance doesn't end up being how things play out. You've sort of seen that in the past as well. So Rose Quartz Lemonade says, favorite Kyle moment was the Notre Dame game. I was proud of him. Can't imagine too many people would not point to that as the highlight of his career. That was a heck of a drive and a big moment, and in a national TV primetime game at Notre Dame. Cam Ward or Brown / Kienholz is who I want to see next. I think Brown and Kienholz is going to be your quarterback battle in the spring. They may bring someone else in, but I don't know. What have you seen from Cam Ward that makes Cam Ward immediately, that Cam Ward comes? If Cam Ward comes in, is Cam Ward coming in to be in a quarterback battle with Lincoln Kienholz and Devon Brown, or is Cam Ward coming in because you're telling him you are our guaranteed starter? And if Cam Ward comes in and you tell him that, what do you think happens with Devon Brown and Lincoln Kienholz? That's my concern. And I mean, really, like, how much Cam Ward and Washington State have you watched this year? Because I'm guessing the average college football fan has not watched a ton of Washington State because they didn't have a great season, especially towards the end of the year. And I don't view Cam Ward as a sure thing. You're not getting Drake May through the portal. You're not getting Caleb Williams through the portal. You're getting, okay, but yeah. And then Marv would have had a Heisman if he wasn't with Kyle. I mean, if Josh Simmons doesn't step on Donovan Jackson's left foot accidentally, knocking Donovan Jackson off balance, allowing who was it? Was it Jaden Harrell to kind of knock into Donovan Jackson while he's off balance, knocking him into Kyle McCord and hitting Kyle McCord's arm just as he's throwing to Marvin Harrison when Marvin Harrison was open in the last 30 seconds of the Michigan game. If Josh Norman doesn't step on Donovan Jackson's left foot accidentally, Kyle McCord might complete that pass to Marvin Harrison. Marvin Harrison might have had a path into the end zone, and then you have Gus Johnson screaming "Hello Heisman" on the TV, and I don't think that was Kyle McCord's issue. I really don't think that Kyle McCord was the only thing standing behind Marvin Harrison in the Heisman.
Well, also, I think Kyle McCord threw it to Marvin quite a bit and looked his way quite a bit, and sometimes too much when we're talking about other receivers running open. One of those reasons is because he would lock on to Marvin and stay there. So I think he did all he could to make Marvin Harrison a Heisman candidate. Obviously, there were some throws that could have been better. I'm not doubting that at all. Back to Will Rogers. If he had entered the portal after the 2022 season where he threw for 3,900 yards, or the 2021 season where he threw for 4,700 yards, then I think he would be higher up on the board. This past year in a completely unfit offense for him at Mississippi State, 1,600 yards, just didn't work at all once Mike Leach passed. Again, if we're just looking at big numbers, that's Kyle McCord could go throw for 4,700 yards in Mike Leach's offense. It doesn't mean he can do what you want him to do in Ohio State's offense. And I'll also mention Cam Ward. Again, I've tried to say this as many times as people will hear it. Has led the nation in fumbles the past 2 seasons. 18 total fumbles, more than anybody else in the nation. Has thrown interceptions, and not a lot of interceptions, but there are no perfect quarterbacks out there. Even Caleb Williams, look what he did this year. He was fantastic a year ago. Look what he did this year. He was not as nearly as good as he was last year, and certainly not. I mean, it was a bad year for Caleb Williams. So even the guarantees aren't necessarily guarantees. And I think what all of these quarterbacks have, Cam Ward, Will Rogers, Will Howard, we can name them all, is that they're not Kyle McCord. And for that, most Buckeye fans would view them as upgrades, when in fact they're just different versions of quarterbacks who aren't perfect.
Yeah, it's the the guy with the girlfriend who's like he's been with her for a while, and it's like, oh well, I wonder if she's more fun than my current girlfriend. Like certainly she doesn't have any of the flaws that my current girlfriend does. Like I mean, maybe okay, the grass is not always greener. That is a lesson that you will probably learn at some point during your life, that it is not always greener on the other side. The shiny object in the distance is not always better than than the object close at hand. WV Buckeye says Kyle McCord was the Don Mattingly of Ohio State, could not win the big one. I mean, and I guess I have 2 points here. One is, you mentioned Caleb Williams. Who had more wins over Notre Dame at Notre Dame this year, Caleb Williams or Kyle McCord? The big one, scare quotes here, the big one tends to be defined as the one you lost. If Ohio State had lost to Notre Dame on the road in primetime, would that have been a big game? Because they won, so therefore it wasn't a big game. Now, I was there. I got to tell you, at the time it felt like a big game, but maybe that's just me being biased by the moment. But at the time it was discussed as the big moment. Penn State. If you lose to Penn State, that's a big game. If you beat Penn State, well, of course you beat Penn State. Everyone. Tony, go back 4 years and read the comments about how no one gives a crap about meeting Michigan. Michigan is not the measuring stick anymore. No one cares about winning the Big Ten, Tony. They do that every year. You got to win the playoff game. You can't. That's not the measuring stick. And the measuring stick keeps changing, and the measuring stick, I think, gets applied retroactively a little bit in terms of what's a big game and what's not.
Well, I mean, C.J. Stroud has become a better Ohio State quarterback by playing well in the NFL. Like, he could not win the big one either. The one big one that he won, we would say maybe the Rose Bowl, but he lost to Georgia, lost to Michigan twice. So there are a lot of guys who aren't winning the big ones. And if winning the big one is the measure, then Craig Krenzel is one of the great Ohio State quarterbacks of all time, when he wouldn't even be getting a scholarship offer to Ohio State or, several Big Ten schools at this point.
Yeah. Here's another one from, can you imagine if Ohio State took a 3-star quarterback from Utica, Michigan, and then was like, all right, he's gonna be our guy, and he's gonna go 5 for 19 in the national championship game. It's gonna go great. I don't think that would go over all that well right now. A little bit of a different era in college football. Jack McCurry says Brandon Innes just posted video on X. God, I'm never going to get used to that. Twitter.com of Dante Moore throwing him a touchdown pass in the All-American game. Dante Moore, of course, the quarterback, 5-star prospect out of the state of Michigan. Last year, went up and played for Ryan Day's good buddy in Chip Kelly at UCLA this year. His final stats this year, 53% completions, 1,610 yards, 11 touchdowns, 9 picks. And, you think of him as a scrambler, and finished 45 attempts, minus 84 yards, 0 touchdowns rushing. I mean, it's a true freshman. So I think you have to grade on a curve there, and that's, it's the same conversation we were having with people about Lincoln Kienholz last year. It's the same conversation we're going to be having with people about Aaron Nolan next year. Is Dante Moore a sure enough thing? He's a second-year player. So you're telling Devin, if you bring him in, you're telling Devon Brown, there's a guy who's younger than you who we're bringing in. So Devon Brown is gone. You're telling Lincoln Kienholz, this is a guy who's the same year as you, who we're bringing in, so you're probably losing Lincoln Kienholz. Is Dante Moore a sure enough thing that it's worth losing those two guys, who also were, 5-star, 4-star kind of prospects? I'm not answering the question. I'm asking the question. There's a question mark on the end of that sentence. Is Dante Moore a sure enough thing that it's worth bringing him in, knowing that you're probably going to lose 1 to 2 of those guys, and also it's not going to be real easy to bring in another quarterback flesh out, fill out that quarterback room, other than a Tristen Gebbia, Gunnar Hoke, the kid from West Virginia, Chris Chugginoff type. So then you've got Dante Moore and a true freshman and the Chris Chugginoff type, and that's your quarterback room next year. How are you feeling about that? Dante Moore got hurt this year, so then you've got a true freshman and the Chris Chugginoff type. I mean, how are you feeling about that as your quarterback room? I think, it is possible. I'm sure, Brandon Ennis, if he has a good relationship with Dante Moore, would probably love to have Dante Moore come in. I think this is a more nuanced and more complicated conversation, other than, well, he was a 5-star, he must be good, let's bring him in.
Well, and these freshman class players all play in various camps together, 7-on-7s, All-American games. Like Lincoln Kienholz, I believe, threw a touchdown to Carnell Tate in the formerly Army All-American game. So all of these players have relationships with each other. With Dante Moore, I think everybody saw him week 0, I think maybe it was, or week -1 against Coastal Carolina, when he came in off the bench, and he looked really, really intriguing. 7 for 12, 143 yards, threw the ball downfield really well. And I think he got the start the next week against San Diego State, looked good again. And then we stopped paying attention because college football was happening, and there's no longer any reason to pay attention to UCLA. He's got a ton of talent. I think the interesting thing here is that Chip Kelly will give Ryan Day the full information packet on what Dante Moore is, who he is, what his third uncle wants, things like that. And in this era, the dad, the camp, all of these people are involved. So he'll get all of the tea on that one. I'm guessing, Tom, they're going to vet so many people, and as you're talking about with this portal, you also have to weigh, like right now, you are still dealing with this season while moving on to next season. And he talked about yesterday, we got to finish the season the right way. But how patient can you be when, other schools that are going after these same targets aren't necessarily going to be patient? And I guess the level of patience depends on your level of confidence that it's Devin Brown or Lincoln Kienholz. If they are not confident in that, then I expect to see visits. If Cam Ward tweets out taking an official visit to Ohio State, blah, 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 that tells me a whole lot about the feelings on Devin Brown and Lincoln Kienholz and the staff's comfort in losing them. Because basically, if you're inviting somebody in, you're inviting people out. And at this point right now, if you bring in one, you're probably losing two. And now your numbers get really, really tight. And you can't necessarily worry about numbers more than the upper level of your talent. Like you need to have the best starting quarterback you can, as opposed to the best quarterback room overall that you can. So this is going to be interesting. If they're confident in their two guys, and the thing is, like they're going to get a lot of opportunity to see those two guys in practice. And over these next 3 weeks, while that is going on, are they still wheeling and dealing in the portal for a quarterback? It's one of those things where, if you don't recruit for a couple of days, it's like if you don't shave for a couple of days, you look like a bum. Can they afford to let everybody else do the whining and dining of the quarterbacks while they evaluate Lincoln Kienholz and Devin Brown as it relates to next year?
Yeah, it feels like, well, they should have a decent sense for where those guys are right now and where those guys will be, should be in terms of growth and development over the next few months, in the lead up to next season. I don't think you're going to see them race out and try and add some big name to the portal. I don't think that probably is the decision that makes the most sense, because I know they like Lincoln Kienholz a lot. I know they like Lincoln Kienholz a lot. I think there is a very good chance Lincoln Kienholz is the starting quarterback at Ohio State at some point in the future. The chance that Lincoln Kienholz is the starting quarterback at Ohio State next year probably just went up significantly this morning. Devon Brown was a 5-star guy coming in as well. Devon Brown got hurt, missed the spring game. They obviously saw him throughout the spring. They saw him throughout fall camp. There was a moment during fall camp where you sort of started to hear like, hey, he's making a little bit of run, and then Kyle sort of separated again. So, it is in there for Devon Brown. You haven't, I don't think it's in there to the point where you've seen it as much as the online discourse would lead you to believe. I think it's possible that Devon Brown is the best starting quarterback. I think it's a very, very likely scenario that Devon Brown is a starting quarterback for the Cotton Bowl at this point, with Lincoln Kienholz being a true freshman. And let's see what he looks like in the Cotton Bowl. Let's see what he looks like with a full month of reps with the ones. I'm sure he's going to be splitting some reps with the ones with Lincoln Kienholz this month, but let's see what he looks like as the starter in the Cotton Bowl, and then see where they feel they are at that point. I think they have to, if they think they're going to be active in the portal, you probably have to be looking in the portal right now. I think the most likely scenario is that the starter for Ohio State in 2024 is either Devin Brown or Lincoln Kienholz, for game one, and then you see where you go from there. Maybe they look at what they've got and they decide it's worth rolling the dice on a Dante Moore or something like that. But would that tell you more about Dante Moore and how they view him, or would that tell you more about Devin Brown and Lincoln Kienholz and how they view them?
Yeah, column A, column B, because you can't bring in somebody that you think is as good as your guys, basically. Then you're just creating more of a mess. Somebody you need to make sure that you're bringing in the guy who is going to be your starter. They have to go back to their old way of doing the portal for this thing. Like we only go to the portal to land starters. That if you're going to go to the portal, you better bring in a starter, because you're going to lose the other two guys, probably at least one of them. And a 1-year rental doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to lose Lincoln Kienholz, because I don't know that Lincoln Kienholz viewed himself as definitely the starter in 2024. And if everything goes wrong, then he's out. But now he's viewing things as a much more open opportunity. And if you close the opportunity, then you might have some hard feelings there. And again, I don't care about feelings. We just need the best player. That's fine. But just know that everybody you bring in, it's like an equal and opposite reaction in terms of the transfer portal.
All right, and we gotta get caught up on some super chats here. Ryan Dawes says, even though he entered the portal, can Kyle come back? Yes, he is not technically gone yet. He would not be gone until he signs with another team. He could theoretically come back to Ohio State. I think that would probably be a difficult thing to see happening at this point. Like once you there's a little bit of a crossing the Rubicon thing. It's not that guys never go in the portal and come back, but when you're the starting quarterback and you go in the portal before the season's over, that feels a little like a crossing the Rubicon kind of moment where, when is he going to come back? Is he going to come back in 3 days like LOL JK? Is he going to come back after the Cotton Bowl? When is that going to happen? I think that's a theoretically possible thing that I don't see happening, most likely.
Yeah, technically, yes, it can happen. I do remember in the early days of the portal, people were like, there had to be like a ruling on could coaches move on, and use that scholarship up. And it's like, yes, once the player hits the portal, that scholarship is gone and they can put it somewhere else. Nowadays, scholarship numbers are fake. They don't matter anymore. So it's like you don't even have to worry about, now they can go use that number. It's like they're going to go to camp. Every team's going to go to camp with like 95 players, or through spring with like 95 players. So then the summer cuts come. But so he could. I do not expect that. And I don't want to deal with having to do a live show and the comments of Kyle McCord is back at Ohio State and seeing the reaction from Buckeye fans.
I didn't want to go in the comments this morning, and I have solved that by just going to the Super Chats Only tab. So the number keeps going up on the live side. We'll have to take a look at that in a minute and make any personnel adjustments as needed in the live comments in a minute when we get caught up on these. Mike Freno says, isn't the big saying from Rogers this year essentially about reading defenses how it was stupid? He would not be a fit for Ryan Day. I mean, I don't remember that, but he's an air raid quarterback, with a Mike Leach, having played for Mike Leach the last couple of years, and Ryan Day obviously, you see a lot of air raid principles from Ryan Day. You'll see mesh, and you'll see 4 verts and all that kind of stuff from Ryan Day, but I think Ryan Day's offense is a little more adapted, a little more evolved than Mike Leach's in terms of a little bit more of a pro style thing rather than just the pure uncut air raid that Mike Leach ran. No one ran more of a like traditional original air raid than Mike Leach did. So yeah, I think you're probably yes, it's a similar quarterback, but I think Ryan Day's asking more from his quarterbacks than Mike Leach was.
I will say, Tom, I believe the humorist Will Rogers once said, "Everybody's stupid, just in different ways."
Man, and a man before his time. Avi says, what's scary is we just lost the best quarterback in a room, and he wasn't great, but he was very good. If our current quarterback room is indicative of the 2024 season, it's going to be a hard watch. This is not good news. I would agree that this is not good news for Ohio State because, as much as there was all this narrative about how, it was actually just because Ryan Day was scared of Kyle McCord or Kyle McCord's dad or whatever, and that's the only reason Kyle McCord played. Like Ryan Day is going to play the quarterback that he feels gives them the best chance to win. That is what Ryan Day is going to do. I don't think, I don't think losing Kyle McCord is a great thing for the Ohio State football program. It is possible that Kyle McCord could have gotten beaten out between now and the start of the 2024 season for the starting job. He did not get beat out this year. There was nothing you saw from any of the other quarterbacks on the roster that would have been like, yes, there is a thing that makes me think that this guy is better than Kyle McCord. Like I have repeatedly asked that. We got a comment on yesterday's live stream, like, well, what about the long touchdown to Brandon Inniss in the Purdue game? It was like, that's against like the third string Purdue defensive backs in the waning minutes of a, like, that's the thing. Is like, well, as Kevin said, like Tate Martell went 10 for 10 in the second half against Rutgers one time. Like that doesn't, like, what did you see during an actual thing? And the answer is no one has an answer. So yeah, I do think Kyle McCord was the best option for Ohio State this year. That does not mean that Kyle McCord would have necessarily been the best option for Ohio State in 2024. He might have been. He might not have been. Now it sounds like he's not going to be an option at all. And so, there is plenty of time for guys to improve and grow this year, between now and the start of the 2024 season. I would certainly not write off the 2024 season. I think that, again, like when does a football team improve the most between its first game and its second game? When does a quarterback improve the most between his first season and his second season? So, again, I am going to once again kind of say, like, hey, keep an eye on Lincoln Kienholz. They really like him. I promise they really like him. Devin Brown has the pedigree. Let's see what it looks like in the Cotton Bowl. Maybe Devin Brown will come out and light up the world in the Cotton Bowl. Maybe. We don't know. But even if he doesn't, you've got all of the spring, all of the summer, lots of time for, Ryan Day has a pretty good track record with quarterbacks. I would bet on Ryan Day having a pretty good quarterback this time next year.
I think you need to play both of those guys in the game. Back to Avi, I think that is a very well reasoned and real. It's a realistic comment on the situation as it is. Not any of the no emotions there. It's just facts, and this is a thing that Ohio State now has to deal with. And it's not good for Ohio State. It's good for Devin Brown and Lincoln Kienholz. And I guess the positive aspect for Ohio State is they no longer have to, they can just not worry about that option. They have more opportunities now for Brown and Kienholz to win the job and get their necessary reps to win the job, as opposed to if they were going to bring in somebody and Kyle McCord was still there. Now you've got four guys that you're splitting the reps up, 25% in the spring, and you're never going to give anybody the opportunity to show that they need to show that they can win it.
All right, so Treasure Torah says, what's up, Tomo and Tony G? Hope all is well. In my humble opinion, this is a blessing in disguise from what I've seen. Ryan Day needs a specific type of quarterback who can execute Day's offense at a high level.
I think the specific type is just a guy who can operate Ryan Day's offense at a high level, because I don't think Justin Fields and C.J. Stroud were the same guy. They both did things differently. C.J. Stroud, the incredible accuracy, and Justin Fields was everything. You just need a guy that is going to make the simple plays, the routine plays routine. And that, to me, was Kyle McCord's biggest downfall, is that the routine plays were the ones that were sometimes so frustrating. On a third down pass to an open receiver on just a stop route, the ball is at his feet and it's 2 yards away. if you make those plays and just keep moving the chains, then eventually you're going to hit the end zone. So the lack of the routine plays making them routine, I think, is why things did not go as well. Everybody misses deep shots. Everybody misses, some receivers in terms of seeing them or not seeing them. But when you're wide on the routine throws, then that's going to drive everybody crazy, because those are throws that everybody should be able to make. It doesn't matter when you're making that fourth down pass, for 20 yards to Emeka Egbuka down the seam against Notre Dame down to the 1 yard line. That's fantastic. That's elite. But it's also elite to hit an 8-yard stop route and move the chains. That just didn't happen enough. And I think that's clearly some of that leads to a ton of frustration and some of the vitriol that we've seen.
Yeah. All right. Have we done Treasure of the Tour yet? We did, right?
Yes, we just did that one.
All right. Sorry, I'm scrolling through the regular chat to make sure we don't need to give anyone a timeout. All right, Terry Kovac says, Day needs to drive home the fact that regardless of portal or recruiting, you have to compete for the job. Nothing is given. It's just the new college landscape. I think that is exactly what you are seeing today. This is a direct result of, you were the starter this year, you got to earn it next year. You were not the CJ Stroud level starter. You got to earn it next year, and that's, that is going into, I didn't realize, I had lost track. I thought he had 2 more years. I think he only has 1 more year, because he played 5 games his first year. I was remembering that as 4. Played 5 games his first year, so he only has 1 more year left. So, from Kyle McCord's point of view, if you have 1 year of college left to prove that you are an NFL caliber player, you would want to make sure you are starting in order to be able to show that, in order to be able to be at the, when you come play for Ryan Day, you come play quarterback for Ryan Day, everyone's assumption is, well, I'll be a first-round draft pick in 3 years, because that sort of was the track record. It was Dwayne Haskins, 3 years, first-round draft pick. Justin Fields, 3 years, first-round draft pick. C.J. Stroud, 3 years, first-round draft pick. Well, Kyle McCord just finished his 3rd year. He is not going to be a first-round draft pick. And if he was going to be the quarterback for the 4th year, if he played, you would sort of put your money on, if he was going to be the starter, you would probably put your money on him being a first-round draft pick based on the track record and based on what you would expect in terms of improvement. But you only get 1 chance to do this, and if you're coming in with that expectation, you're going to want to have some kind of a certainty, and if you aren't going to get that certainty, then you may feel like you have a better opportunity to hit that goal somewhere else where you're more likely to be the quarterback. And frankly, there are probably a lot of schools that would be happy to guarantee Kyle McCord the starting quarterback position and a whole bunch of NIL money and whatever else you would like. And, I'm going to be fascinated to see where he ends up, because there was a lot of talk about him. He was looking very seriously at Penn State before he committed to Ohio State. And, Penn State has a quarterback, Drew Aller, who, is young but promising and talented, and so I don't think it's going to be Penn State, but I don't know where he ends up. That's going to be a very interesting story to watch as we kind of keep going through this whole thing.
Well, Matt Rule, Nebraska head coach, last week said a good quarterback in the portal right now is commanding between $1 and $2 million a year. So, go somewhere where you're essentially guaranteed to start, because if somebody's going to pay you that, then they're not going to want to waste that money. But we have seen other transfer quarterbacks, go somewhere and then get beat out or not play well enough, including Nebraska themselves with Jeff Sims from Georgia Tech losing out after being injured and playing poorly. But go somewhere where you believe you are going to be the starter and also get some nice cash from that as well.
Man, Kyle McCord at Nebraska would be fascinating, because I think he would be such an incredible step up for them. I think he probably goes somewhere bigger than that. But boy, if he goes to Nebraska, he's a significant enough step up for them that they've missed bowl games by that much, so many years in a row, that he probably gets them over the hump, and he is worth the $1 million or $2 million investment there if that ends up being what it is. Guess where Nebraska plays next fall, Tony? Columbus, Ohio. Boy, would that be an interesting way for this whole story to shake out. Ryan Dawes says, sorry to be off topic. Mizzou coach Eli Drinkwitz made a Stallions joke, counter Stallions joke, right before he went off the air yesterday. It was well timed. I have still not heard this. I have heard
really?
tell of this. I have not gone through those calls. Some of us were busy doing another show yesterday, Tony. That's fine. You were. In case you're wondering why Tony wasn't on the show yesterday, Tony was rushing off to go do the coach conference calls. But what was I have not heard it, but you were obviously on the call. So what was the Eli Drinkwitz joke?
Well, this was just talking to on ESPN Reese Davis, and towards the end of the conversation, he's like, Reese, I'm getting a call. I got to take this. It's Connor Stallions. He's going to give me some tips on Ohio State, something to that effect. That's not the first Connor Stallions joke that he has made, by the way. So he's leaned into that, and this started several weeks ago. Tom, I don't know if you saw the text. You may not have. I
was not going to blow up your spot, but
okay,
go on.
All right.
Yes,
I'll just break down the fourth wall. I did miss the show yesterday because I had to hurry to get to the 4:20 p.m. coach's Zoom with Brian Day. However, what I failed to realize is that it was 4:20 Central, so I left in a hurry to be ready for the Zoom, and I ended up being there like an hour and 15 minutes early. So I watched some of the show. Great job. I mean, it's not as good as it could have been, obviously, but
Kevin
still,
was on
okay.
it. So
yes.
Yeah, you were not the first person on the in the Ohio State beat to get tripped up by time zones over the last few years. So. Hey, speaking of disdain for Kevin Noon, Jordan Kapler, I think Kyle took a lot of undue disdain from the OSU fan base. I wonder how this quarterback room will shake out now going into next season. I know all of this is Tom's fault. Boy, we have officially turned the corner. It is now Jordan hates me season after Jordan hates Kevin season. Frankly, I understood the last one. This one, I don't know where any of this is coming from, but that's fine. Either way, I do think he took a lot of undue disdain from the fan base. And I think, there were a lot of people asking, is this the fan base drove Kyle McCord out? No, that is not what happened here. It is, frankly, if you are a quarterback, literally anywhere, and you lose a game at literally any time, this is what happens. And there is, people talk about the lunatic fringe, and it's the 5% of the fan base or the 10% of the fan base that gives everyone else a bad name. That's true everywhere. I'm sure when Ryan Day lost games at New Hampshire, there was someone in the stands yelling about how the quarterback was a bum and how it was all his fault. The most popular player on any team anywhere in America is the backup quarterback, unless you are undefeated and rolling to a national championship or a state championship or a conference championship or whatever. It is always the backup quarterback is the most popular player on the team. And, sometimes that's true. Sometimes that's deserved. Sometimes that's not. But, I'm sure this was not the first time that Kyle McCord heard a quarterback be, dragged for losing a game. It's not to say it's right. It's just like this is one of these things where it's a bigger audience. It's a bigger fan base. There's probably a little more vitriol now than there was in high school. But, this is not a brand new thing for a quarterback. And no, that is not what drove this decision ultimately. How does the quarterback room shake out now going into next season? I think it's Devin Brown and Lincoln Kienholz, and this is another open quarterback competition. We'll see what this next month looks like, and maybe Devin Brown comes out and complete 75% of his passes for 350 yards and runs for 150 yards, and they light up Missouri, and everyone is completely on board with Devin Brown. More likely, I think it's going to be an open quarterback competition in the spring between those two guys. Maybe they bring someone in, and I do want to bring in one non-super chat. Like you guys, but this is insanity to watch all of Cam Ward's games. He destroyed Oregon's defense and outdueled Penix. There's a reason 10 schools declared they wanted him. Please stop. Cam Ward against Oregon. How many touchdown passes did Cam Ward have against Oregon, Tony?
Was it one?
One. Completed 70% of his passes for 438 yards and one touchdown. No picks. That's a great game. That's a tremendous game. How many times have you seen Ohio State quarterbacks throw for massive yardage totals and score one touchdown? Against Washington, completed 66% of his passes for 317 yards, 3 touchdowns, and
two
picks. 2 picks. I know a quarterback who threw 2 picks in a rivalry game last weekend. I
Loss.
mean, it was in fact a loss, yes. And again, Cam Ward is no one is saying Cam Ward is terrible.
Mm-mm.
Cam Ward is just not necessarily a significant enough improvement over the guys on the roster at Ohio State right now that it is worth potentially running both of them out of town. That is what we're saying. We're not saying he's bad. We're not saying that he is not going to be a good quarterback somewhere else he goes. We're saying the bar at Ohio State for quarterback play is very, very high. And I don't know that they're going to, if they were not willing to guarantee Kyle McCord the starting job and, whatever shiny NIL money, why would they be willing to guarantee Cam Ward the starting job and all of the shiny NIL money without having had him on their team before and risking, you could bring Kyle McCord back and not lose everyone in your quarterback room. Cam Ward, I think you run the risk of losing everyone in your quarterback room plus all the other stuff.
Now, I'm just going to take issue with this. Anybody who is watching us and likes us, there's no way they've watched all of Cam Ward's games. That is a factual impossibility that somebody's watching all of the Washington State games. I would like to go back and watch all of those. And the thing is, when we're talking about these guys, I think Cam Ward could do what Kyle McCord did. I think Cam Ward could come to Ohio State and go 11-1. I think most quarterbacks should be able to go 10-2 at Ohio State. It's the 12-0 that is the bar that needs to be crossed, and I think that's what you're looking for. Now, the best guy in the portal is going to be the one that everybody's clamoring for, and he's the best guy ever. If that's all there is, then he's the best guy. You need to go get him. If he's the top free agent, he's the top draft pick. Whether he's as good as in past years, like some drafts are bad, some free agent classes are bad. Just you can't measure how good somebody is based on where the class is. Like I don't know what kind of fit Cam Ward is, but I think he would do just fine at Ohio State. I think Riley Leonard would do just fine. I think a lot of these quarterbacks would do just fine. But Kyle McCord did just fine at Ohio State, and it's not good enough. And so you've got to find somebody that is going to do better than that, and you've recruited to make that happen. And now you just have to decide, is that where you want to go, or do you want to do something else? Now, I want to take issue before we get to the Super Chat. Surgeon General 108 a few minutes ago said that, am I the only one to notice all the teams that won this weekend had QBs that moved their feet to run for yardage, a.k.a. first downs? Dual threat means dual threat, not pocket watchers. Michael Penix rushed for -4 yards in the win over Oregon. I mean, he is not. He is a pocket passing quarterback. Get the ball out. You can win that way. But it's. I think it would be better for Ohio State to have somebody that can move around and make plays. And I think the two guys that they have right now, Devin Brown and Lincoln Kienholz, can do that. And if that's what people want, and I think that's what people wanted. When C.J. Stroud was here, people wanted him to run more, and then when he left, they're like, let's try to get somebody who runs more, and that's not Kyle McCord, but he would run. The thought was he would be a more willing runner than C.J. Stroud. That didn't happen, and so you've got two guys, Devin Brown, who was deemed the better athlete, the more athletic guy, and then we saw it in action. It's like, well, that's not quite the running threat that I thought we would see, but Lincoln Kienholz, I believe, could be that guy that can keep plays alive, more J.J. McCarthy than Kyle McCord, if you want to go that way, I think. So he might be the guy that this Cotton Bowl is going to be the first spring game of the year, but it's going to carry a much more weight, and you might be able to see him running around making some plays, and really he could light up the fan base based on how he plays if he gets an opportunity in Dallas.
Yeah. I think this just made the Cotton Bowl number one much more likely to be a loss for Ohio State, but also much more interesting for Ohio State. I mean, I think the narrative, the interest in practice and the lead up to that game is going to be far greater than it was. Would have been normally with it's Kyle McCord starting, and whoever we'll see if we see anyone else. Because I think you are going to see both of those guys take meaningful snaps. You probably treat this a little like the first and the second game of this season, where you go in and you treat it like an open quarterback competition. Because I know Ryan Day said the number one goal is to win this game. I think Ryan Day has a good enough sense for the long-term vision that I think him saying that now looking back, knowing what we know now, that to me says Devon Brown is going to start the Cotton Bowl, because Devon Brown, as a guy who's been in the system for 2 years, gives you a better chance to win the Cotton Bowl than Lincoln Kienholz does as a first-year guy. But I do think you probably see both of those guys. You might as well. What do you have to lose? I mean, we don't know about opt-outs yet. That hasn't started to come out yet. But you've seen a bunch of transfers out of the defensive back room. So you're losing a bunch of guys out of the defensive back room. If Denzel Burke opts out, you're getting thin in the defensive back room. Mizzou has a real talented passing game. Like, that's going to be, Davis and Igbinosun better eat his Wheaties, because he's going to be going up against some big time players, and this is going to be a great test for Jermaine Matthews too. This is going to be a real challenge for Ohio State in this Cotton Bowl to win the game, and ultimately, if you win the Cotton Bowl, 3 seconds after the Cotton Bowl, after the confetti stops falling, everyone's going to go, no one cares, it doesn't matter. It's going to be like the last time Ohio State went to the Cotton Bowl and they beat USC, and everyone's like, well, that's fine, but who cares? And this time you don't even have like the famous helmet on the other side of the field. So this is whether anyone wants to admit it or not, spring ball, the beta test version of Ohio State spring ball 2024, especially now. So I'm guessing you're going to see a mixture of quarterbacks and during practices and during the game. Glasswing Butterfly says Kyle will go elsewhere and be better than this year. Year 2 as a starting quarterback versus year 1. Day will be blamed. What's interesting is, I think when you say Ohio State quarterback enters the transfer portal and leaves, everyone immediately says Joe Burrow. My wife's first comment was, he's going to go to LSU and win the national championship. And it was like, well, maybe. I don't know if Jaden Daniels has another year or not. But, you go through the list of Ohio State decommits and transfers and stuff like that, and there's a lot of Tate Martell and Jack Miller and Emory Jones and DeJuan Mathis is on there, where it's like, that didn't really go anywhere notable. McCord's a little bit in a different category because he has, as a starter. I think, we're going to get to a super chat from Mike Farino about Rutgers in a minute and his Kyle McCord's family ties there. Rutgers is a possibility. Obviously, a Philly, New Jersey, Philly guy. I think that's a real possibility. I would assume that he's hoping to land at a spot a little higher on the college football totem pole than Rutgers. But, we talked about Nebraska earlier. If he goes to Nebraska and they win 9-10 games next year, I think that's entirely possible.
What about USC is going to be losing their quarterback, and Lincoln Riley is a guy who relies on transfers. Brought one with him to USC from Oklahoma. There are going to be no shortage of places, and I don't know how much what Washington has done in recruiting. They're going to be losing Michael Penix. Oregon's going to be losing Bo Nix. Jaden Daniels out of LSU. Like, there's a ton of guys leaving this year, and so he moves way up the. I do wonder where he is on the on most teams' boards. I will tell you, Tom, he is the number 1 transfer portal quarterback in terms of NIL valuation. If that sort of number means anything to you, sir.
Yeah. That's a very precise number. That's a very precise number that has a lot of meaning to me. Yes. Real quick from Mike Farino, we got 2 in a row. Mike says McCord ends up at Rutgers. I think, didn't his dad play there? Yes, his dad was a quarterback at Rutgers in the early '90s. Greg Schiano, obviously the current Rutgers quarterback, was a GA on that staff, and was asked about Kyle McCord's dad, Derek, being there, and just it was sort of one of those answers that was kind of like, yes, we were in the same building, but Schiano was on the defensive side of the staff, and Derek McCord was not the starting quarterback on the offensive side. So, they might have eaten in the cafeteria at the same time, but I think they have maintained some kind of a communication. And obviously, from when Kyle was a recruit, Schiano was there. So, that would, I think that family relationship and the geographic relationship makes that a little more sense. Mike Farino then also says Rutgers in the 2020s greater than Nebraska in the 2020s. This is a really fascinating and nuanced conversation because, first of all, Rutgers won 6 games. I think the ceiling for Nebraska in the 2020s is higher than the ceiling for Rutgers in the 2020s. I kind of want to give I kind of want to give Matt Rule a couple years before I kind of declare what the ceiling is. But all that said, with the divisions going away, Rutgers is no longer in the Big Ten East. Rutgers no longer has Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, 3 automatic losses on the schedule every year. Now, they may have 3 automatic losses with Oregon and Washington and Penn State or whoever, but, getting out of the Big Ten East for the Marylands and Indianas and Rutgers of the world is a good thing. Getting out of the Big Ten West, welcome to the deep end of the pool, Nebraska. You have been playing with your swimmies in the shallow end and not getting to bowl games the last few years. I think, Nebraska is one of those programs where they could be better and not see a material impact on their record, depending on, I haven't looked at their schedule for next year, but, if you're getting one of the Pacific Northwest teams and you're playing Ohio State next year and maybe they get Michigan or Penn State or whoever, I haven't looked at the schedule, but the pool gets a little deeper for the Big Ten West teams, and the pool maybe gets a little less deep for some of the teams exiting the Big Ten East. So that's all part of that conversation, I think.
Yeah, Nebraska to me is still sort of possibly a national brand and can recruit a wider area than Rutgers, which is more of a regional brand. But Rutgers' footprint is much better than Nebraska's in terms of recruiting in that area. I think they're very, very similar. I still go with Nebraska as having the higher ceiling just because of their history and the national brand that they have. And I really do like Matt Rule, and he's done it at Baylor. He's done well at Temple. So I would expect that to continue at Nebraska, although this is a much different world now. And it is, if you can't get a quarterback through NIL, then you're not going to be able to do much. And so that's where it's going to have to start for them. They tried Jeff Sims. It was a disaster. And the recruiting, they don't recruit quarterbacks well enough to go with their recruits. And the thing is, if they do, and he plays really good, really well 1 year, then he's going to command like $1.5–2 million in the open market. Now you've got to keep your guy. So they're going to have to spend for quarterbacks, and somebody's going to spend for Kyle McCord, and he's going to make some good money.
Interesting one from Sir General 108. Michigan State would be his best bet. I mean, Lord knows the quarterback position is open at Michigan State. Dante Moore goes to Michigan State. I don't know, but Kyle McCord going to Michigan State. You've got a new coach, Jonathan Smith. Does Jonathan Smith bring DJ Uiagalelei over from Oregon State to be his quarterback there? Because then you've got a guy who has been in your system already for a year. Was good but not great there, but you could probably get him. I'm going to guess that Kyle McCord is higher on most national quarterback transfer boards than DJ Uiagalelei. I'm going to guess that that's probably true. So, I think that would be the only thing that would make me think maybe not. But, and McCord may want to get out of the Big Ten, too. If McCord goes somewhere where he doesn't have to play Ohio State next year and doesn't have to play Michigan next year, I mean, that's a, you just sort of remove yourself from that conversation and you go play for, I don't know, North Carolina or something, whatever. Like I'm picking a school that I know has a quarterback vacancy next year. I have no idea about their depth chart, but Tennessee, like whatever, pick a school. I think he's going to be, I think it's more likely, the more I think about it, the more likely I think it is that he ends up at sort of a name brand school like that rather than a Rutgers or a Michigan State.
What about Ole Miss? They bring in quarterbacks every single year. Jackson Dart, he's still got a little bit of eligibility, I think. Yeah, this is a crazy time where we can just for years this show we didn't like to speculate about the portal. Now it's like it's all open. Like you can speculate on the quarterbacks because it is part of the real world. You can't ignore it any longer. So it is interesting to say, well, what about this guy? What about this guy? The other thing, Tom, is with Ohio State now having an open quarterback job, there may be somebody who's not in the portal looking like, hey, I would love to start at Ohio State, and maybe now some things start moving. Now, who is a surefire national championship winning quarterback out there that isn't heading for the NFL? Like, Is there anybody that is there? There's no C.J. Stroud out there. And again, C.J. Stroud never won a national championship, never won a Big Ten championship, never beat Michigan. So he, as a starting quarterback, failed at all three of Ohio State's goals. So who out there is the sure thing? And maybe I'm gonna just look over in the comments here and see there are no sure things as long as Ryan Day is the head coach, and that well, and take to the super chat right now. From Weddle LOL, chances Day gets the hell out of Columbus. He's soft. I've held for a while now that if Ryan Day leaves, it's because college football is just a complete pain to deal with, and you go play and you go coach in the NFL, talking to people who have done that, who are in the NFL. College is losing coaches to the NFL hand over fist every single year because of the amount of not just recruiting high schoolers, recruiting your own players, recruiting in the portal, recruiting for collectives. Like, there's no time to coach. You are just a fundraiser, a babysitter, all of these things. Now, you do get paid very, very well, so nobody's going to be, feeling sorry for you, as Ryan Day says. But it is a much different job than coaching in the NFL. If you want to be a coach, go to the NFL. If you want to develop young men, you stay in college. But also, it's you develop, and then they go somewhere else, and then you've got to hope that somebody you're bringing in has been as developed as well as the guys that you're losing, because you can't bring somebody in and start off lower than you were before that guy left. So, like, you need to bring in a certain level of competition through the portal, and there's a bunch of names out there. And again, like I said, I think they could all do very, very well at Ohio State. But very well is not the standard. The standard is Heisman candidate, first-round draft pick. And is that, there's like Michael Pratt at Tulane. I have not watched him. That's another name that people are throwing out there. You're losing Willie Fritz, but does he follow Willie Fritz? There's going to be so much movement going on. And, hey, we will be here at youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle to talk about it constantly. So go ahead and like this video while you're watching it now as we continue the show. Thank you very much.
Mika Hanna says, if Kyle goes to Penn State, does Drew Aller try to come home to Ohio State? I mean, I think there's probably two things that aren't going to happen in that sequence. I think Drew Aller is probably, obviously did not have the first year as a starter that Penn State fans were expecting, but that has a lot to do with unrealistic expectations and Penn State not having a ton of skill talent. Like, if I'm James Franklin, I am not that anyone coordinates with their NIL organizations, Tony, but if I did, I would tell my NIL organization, why don't you go find us a couple wide receivers? That would be really help out Drew Aller to have some guys who were better than their current batch of wide receivers who were not national championship caliber this year. That I think would be where I would focus, because I think you put Kyle McCord in there with that group of wide receivers, you have the same issues you had this year. A lot of the same issues you had with Drew Aller. I think you're better off having Aller play another year. Play another year in the system, get him a better supporting cast.
A comment from Biggs Mike's, if JJ McCarthy leaves Michigan will need a quarterback. Now you really want to go full heel. That would accomplish it. I do not expect that, however.
No, I don't. I do not think that that's probably going to be how that goes. Let's see. I'm just sorry going through a million comments here. Here's an interesting one from the Latin. Ohio State got too good a few decades ago. Now it's collapsing like the Roman Empire because they keep assassinating their leaders. There is a certain point where stability is a positive in college football. And, you don't want to be the Auburn that is firing a coach every 2.5 seasons, because you just constantly, you get in a cycle where, Florida State got in that cycle before they hired Mike Norvell, where they were fired, they fired, or Jimbo left, and then Willie Taggart was there for like 2 years, or not even 2 years, and they fired him. And then they brought in Norvell. You can't get in that cycle of firing someone every 2.5, 3 years that becomes something where you never build up as quickly as people want you to. Sometimes it takes time, even in the transfer portal era. Sometimes it takes time, and in the transfer portal era, sometimes you're going to have a step back kind of season. Ohio State has really not had to deal with a step back type of season, other than sometimes they go 11-1 instead of 12-0 in the regular season. That has been the step back kind of season for Ohio State. I think the 10-2, 9-3 step back season for a lot of programs is going to become a reality at times, even in places where you're not used to that, just periodically. With conferences getting more difficult and sort of more consolidated, I think it's going to be a lot harder to go 12-0 in the Big Ten or the SEC than it has been, and it has not been super easy to do that. So I think there is going to be a little bit of a learning curve for college football fan bases over the next few years in terms of what is a realistic expectation, because you're not going to just be able to go 12-0 every year like your Ohio State and Michigan in the 1970s. You're adding some difficult schools to your conference. You're adding, getting into the playoff is easier than it used to be. Now it's about to be 12 teams instead of 4. So, what defines success may change a little bit, but I think there's going to be a little bit of a lag in terms of what fans consider success the first couple of years, and then eventually it's going to catch up. But yeah, I do think there is a certain amount of, you need to be patient, because let's just for a moment, Tony, set aside all of the stuff that we know about Michigan from the year of our Lord 2021 through present. From 2015 to 2020, Jim Harbaugh beat Ohio State a grand total of 0 times, won a grand total of 0 Big Ten championships, and won, I believe, 1 bowl game. Now, the number of bowl games he has won has remained steady at 1, but he has beaten, has gotten other things in place at Michigan and has sort of turned that around. Sometimes you end up with a James Franklin where you just are sort of leveled off at a certain spot. But even James Franklin, if James Franklin leaves, there's no guarantee that the next guy at Penn State is a bum who only wins 10 games every year and gets you to a New Year's Six bowl basically every year. There's no guarantee that it is not your birthright to stay at that level. And it is possible that they need, that they win one more of those games next year and they're 11-1, and boy, then isn't that great progress?
The level of consistency of Ohio State since Woody Hayes took over in 1951, you're talking over 70 years of consistency, and you've got Woody Hayes, Hall of Fame, College Football Hall of Fame head coach, gives way to Earl Bruce, College Football Hall of Fame head coach, gives way to John Cooper, College Football Hall of Fame head coach. Jim Tressel will be in the College Football Hall of Fame if he isn't already. Luke Fickell, 1 year, 6-7 at Ohio State, is gone on to really good things. We'll see where he ends up. Urban Meyer will be in the College Football Hall of Fame. Ryan Day has lost 3 games in the Big Ten in his 5 seasons as head coach, and has an 889 winning percentage. This is a level that no other program in college football has, but it's also something that has to be maintained. And the thing is, if Ryan Day were just to maintain the Earl Bruce, John Cooper, and I say John Cooper, and people are saying he is maintaining the John Cooper thing. He's beyond those teams, but those teams also back then, you played 3 conference games against like Power 5 legit competition. That's no longer the case anymore. But I do wonder how long, before we get to the super chat. Well, let's take the super chat, because then I want to take this in another direction regarding the playoffs.
All right. Shelby says, take a stab at how Jermaine Smith is viewing this news. I think he means Jeremiah Smith, the 5-star wide receiver for Ohio State. I don't know how much this impacts Jeremiah Smith's decision. I mean, he's the number 1 player for those who don't know, the number 1 player in the class of 2024, wide receiver, has been committed to Ohio State for a year and something at this point. If Brian Hartline is still at Ohio State, I don't know that I don't know how much this impacts anything. If Brian Hartline leaves Ohio State, I think that's where you see a significant issue with Jeremiah Smith. I mean, the other school that he has visited repeatedly has been Florida State. Based on what you saw from Florida State the last couple weeks, Jordan Travis is not coming back next year, I don't think. So You know, what based on what you've seen at Florida State the last couple of weeks would would you lead you to believe that Ohio State's quarterback situation is a big concern? I don't, it's possible. It is 2024. You never know until the ink is dry on the letter of intent on early signing day, which is still 16 days away as we speak. It is certainly possible he goes somewhere else, but he has been sort of looking at Florida State. He's visited Florida State a bunch of times. I don't, if he ends up at Florida State, I don't think Kyle McCord, transferring out is the thing that leads to that decision. Like, you look at the track record of developing wide receivers at Ohio State under Brian Hartline. Marvin Harrison's going to be a first-round pick. We'll see if Emeka Egbuka heads out the door or not. But if he does, he's going to be maybe not a first-round pick, but a high pick somewhere in the first, second round, something like that. You got Jackson Smith and Jigba. You got Garrett Wilson. You got Chris Olave. You've even got what's his name that went to Alabama after transferred out? Jameson Williams. I mean, you had literally 3 former Brian Hartline Ohio State wide receivers picked in a row, 11, 12, 13 in the NFL draft a couple of years ago. All of that is still true regardless of who the quarterback is at Ohio State. So, I don't think this is something that I expect to have a material impact on Jeremiah Smith's future.
Now, Tom, if you scroll to my comment from 9:09, I went to Twitter and I grabbed Jeremiah Smith's reaction, which he just tweeted like 6 or 7 minutes ago. And it is the emoji described by the Twitter universe as flushed face. So it's just one of those like wow type things. Like, oh gosh, I don't think that's I don't think it really applies to like Jeremiah Smith, and the younger guys want to see younger quarterbacks as well. So I don't think this is something like, oh no, now my career at Ohio State is going to go off the rails. But also, there's still going to be a lot of stuff that happens with Jeremiah Smith, regardless of the quarterback situation at Ohio State, just because everybody wants him. He is very talented. He is from Florida, which is always an adventure in itself when you're recruiting. As Urban Meyer used to say, when you get a commitment from a Florida kid, that just means they're interested in you. But obviously, Jeremiah Smith has been in it for a long time with Ohio State and has said all of the right things while taking visits to have fun. And I don't think this necessarily impacts his future at all.
No, I don't. This is not the deciding factor, I don't think, at all. Dave K says, do we think Day may have encouraged McCord to leave? No. I think trying to decide whether I want to say I think. I'm pretty sure Day told McCord, you are not guaranteed the starting quarterback position next year. So that's essentially what he said publicly on Sunday as well. I think that is probably the one of the driving factors here behind this. I don't think Ryan Day is thrilled to see Kyle McCord leave, because I think Ryan Day does still think that Kyle McCord is, in terms of winning the Cotton Bowl this year, I think Kyle McCord is probably Ohio State's best option. I think Ryan Day would agree with that. But, is Kyle McCord going to be the best option next September 1? Mm-hmm. That's, I think, more of an open question. And so maybe he is, maybe he isn't. But the fact that he's not, not guaranteed to be that. He is not the C.J. Stroud. He is not the second-year C.J. Stroud, the second-year Justin Fields. You're not ready to guarantee that, and that may not be enough with next year being his last year of eligibility.
Well, and there's a major difference between encouraging someone to leave and not doing something to keep them, like not doing enough to keep them. Like one isn't the other, and somebody can leave without feeling the love that they want or whatever. It doesn't mean you're saying go. You're just saying, I only love you so much. I love you, but I'm not ready to settle down with you, basically.
Rico's highlight says, watch out for Innocent Tate next year. I mean, let's say that Ohio State loses some combination of Harrison, Fleming, Egbuka next year. There is still a lot of talent in that pipeline at the wide receiver position. Wide receiver talent never seems to be the concern at Ohio State, because I think, Innocent Tate for sure. Tate you've already seen on the Chris Olave, Marvin Harrison kind of Garrett Wilson first season, like already becoming an impact guy in the rotation kind of role. So I think he's, you can write him into the depth chart next year in ink. Innis, let's see what the rest of the depth chart looks like, but I think he's certainly going to have a much bigger role next year. And, the rest of the team, does Fleming come back? What does Jeremiah Smith do? Jeremiah Smith's not the only wide receiver Brian Hartline's bringing in. I think you're going to see at least one of those 2024 wide receivers, potentially be on that Carnell Tate kind of track as well. You got Noah Rogers, you got Bryson Rogers. I mean, you got plenty of guys there. We'll see. That is for a team that is going to probably be losing a couple more guys in the portal, that is still a pretty loaded depth chart there. We'll see how we'll see who all's there in the spring and then who all's there in the fall. But it is that is going to be a very competitive room again next year.
You can't lose too many guys, though. I mean, this is going to be a very young room. Mm-hmm. If you do lose Harrison, you're losing Xavier Johnson. If you lose Fleming, who is a senior, Jaden Ballard hasn't played yet. What does he want to do? And again, I don't like to speculate on transfers, but it is the way of the world now. And the 2022 receiving class is down to 2. We'll see how many of those guys remain. And at this point, can you be surprised if almost anybody hits the portal? So you've got to keep your guys. As Ryan Day has said, you're recruiting your own guys as much as you are anybody else at this point, especially this time of season. You're talking to guys, you're having conversations with them constantly to let them know where they see themselves, where the coaches see them, what it means for now, what it means for next year. And then you're also dealing with people back home saying, hey, this local school can get you this. And then then it comes back, my people are saying I can get this from that place. Can I get that for here? And so it's not just recruiting your own players. It's also dealing with the NIL aspect of it and trying to make them as whole as possible, and knowing that somebody leaves State to like say, I don't even want to throw a name out, but somebody leaving Ohio State who hasn't played yet for a larger role somewhere else, that school somewhere else is going to pay more than, because they're seeing this as a sure thing, whereas Ohio State is seeing this as a developmental thing, and we've got bigger fish to fry in terms of guys that we need to keep. So you've got to allocate money in the right ways, and sometimes that leaves guys who haven't done anything yet, who are very, very talented, leaves them to go somewhere else. And it's not because Ohio State doesn't want to keep them. It's just people are making decisions for more than just best fit and playing time and things like that. They're just more moving parts in this at this point. And so these are all things that coaches have to deal with.
Absolutely. I think the transfer portal and the NIL thing all happening at the same time has really had a significant impact on the sport of college football, because it's really changed the leverage of players in terms of what they can ask for above the table, what they can, and what they can do if they want to leave. If you wanted to make, $100,000, what was the Cam Newton church donation thing on the wiretap? Was it? I mean, it was $100,000, $120,000, something. I mean, it was the amount for literally Cam Newton 10 years ago or 15 years ago was 10% of what Matt Rule is talking about, just like a starting quarterback getting in the portal right now. Like, the game done changed, and the combination of the portal and NIL coming in right now has really changed how players have figured out how to leverage that. And I think you're probably going to see the market correct on some of this stuff in the coming years as people figure out, like, hey, just because someone went to a big school before does not necessarily mean that they are going to be playing at that big school level. Like, if they're buried on the depth chart at the big school, then they're probably not going to be playing at that big school level. I think you go through like Ohio State's transfer portal additions from last season. Some of them worked out really well. Josh Simmons worked out really well. There are guys who Ohio State brought in as transfers who played like 15 snaps all season. So that, I think everyone's sort of figuring this whole process out right now, and everything's going to sort of change. The level of NIL, the level of interest in certain portal guys is probably going to change, because there are a lot of guys who go into the portal who don't come back out, and they just kind of like they quietly disappear. And as those stories become cautionary tales in the coming years, like, you know, every player who goes to to play high level college football is sure he's going to make the NFL, and it's like that's like 5% of people or something like that, maybe not even that much. But everyone's sure they're going to be the one who succeeds. Well, everyone who goes in the portal is sure they're going to end up in a better spot and become the next Joe Burrow or the next, you know, whoever, the next, you know, superstar portal, Jameson Williams, whoever. It doesn't always work out that way. You don't always make more money. You don't even always find a landing spot. So that's, you know, that's something that'll get sort of, the realities will probably sink in for a lot of people in the coming years there as well. Real quickly, Odawa Traveler says, McCord leaving will set this program back 3 years. I'm going to need to see some math on that, because I don't think that's, you know, McCord leaving has a very significant impact on what I think might happen in the Cotton Bowl. Maybe it impacts the 2024 season. I don't know that I think it impacts the 2024 season. The 2025 season, if Lincoln Kienholz starts in 2024, the 2025 Buckeyes are much better for the fact that this happened. Because then you have a returning starting quarterback in 2025 when you would not necessarily have had that.
Yeah, well, and Devin, you can say the same thing for Devin Brown in terms of if he wins the job. This is, I think what this does is it lifts the ceiling, maybe perceived ceiling that was on the program if Kyle McCord remains. Now, that does not mean that Devin Brown and Lincoln Kienholz don't have ceilings. We just haven't seen them yet to know exactly how high or high low it is. I think everybody has seen enough of Kyle McCord to know and to base some opinions on, even though I do fully agree he would have been better next year than he was this year. But is that better good enough? And that's the question that Ryan Day clearly is not going to, wasn't going to commit to not having a competition. So clearly, if he felt that Kyle McCord was absolutely good enough to get the job done next year, then you say, yeah, no, you are my starting quarterback. And in terms of the super chat from John Wiley, do you guys believe that Ryan Day's non-commitment to Kyle McCord in his press conference yesterday influenced this decision? No, because they're having conversations directly. Ryan Day doesn't need to speak to the quarterback or his circle indirectly through the media. There are constant conversations going on directly behind the scenes in the halls of the Woody in Ryan Day's office in terms of where he sees things. And so I think Day gave a little peek behind the curtain with his comments, but it's also not something that those were the comments I expect a coach to say of a position as big as quarterback, when you also don't want to lose Devin Brown and Lincoln Kienholz to the portal. You say, yes, the job is open, and whether there's a wink or there's not, it's true, because at any point somebody can play poorly enough to lose a job, and if the competition is playing well enough, they can take that job. And certainly I don't think we've seen anything from anybody at quarterback to think that they can't lose the job at this point. And these are all talented guys, so there's no reason to think that they also couldn't win the job. But then, as they also said, this is every position. It's not just at quarterback. It's every position. You are constantly having to keep your job. And I know we will see people say that they lean towards the seniors. They're too loyal to seniors. And we've seen plenty of freshmen play over the years, plenty of sophomores play over the year. They want the best players to win, or to play. And at this point, they're going to find out who the best quarterback is by letting the competition happen on the field.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. Just going through a couple more. Lots of call for Arch Manning, who was the number 1 overall player. I don't think he's even officially in the portal. There were sort of rumors that he might be in the portal, or might enter the portal, because it depends if Quinn Ewers comes back, and you have Malik Murphy ahead of him as well at Texas. Tony, do you know what Arch Manning's passing line was? I did not know this until I looked it up just now. Arch Manning's total passing line this year, go.
Well, I was going to look it up, but as you said that, I stopped. So I'm going to say 4 of 7 for 38 yards and no touchdowns.
You are over on everything except for touchdowns. No touchdowns was correct. 2 of 5 for 30 yards and no touchdowns. No picks, though, Tony. No picks. And so he's the third quarterback at Texas. Again, a true freshman. Okay, he was a true freshman, so you have 2 proven guys ahead of him. But he didn't leap out and grab the backup quarterback job. And Malik Murphy was not great. And they had plenty of opportunities to play Arch Manning and did not play Arch Manning. Steve Sarkisian knows what he's doing with quarterbacks, so that I don't know that I don't know that I view Arch Manning as a day one walk in light the world on fire quarterback for Ohio State either.
No, and I'd heard people say that the rankings were a little bit ridiculous for Arch Manning given the competition that he played, and so I think maybe that some of that is bearing out where this is just a big step up in competition for him. Not that he can't do it, but that it's going to take some time. And again, anybody that comes in is going to be battling 2 guys in Devin Brown and Lincoln Kienholz who have had 1 year, 2 years in Ryan Day's offense. So they're going to be swimming uphill on this one, upstream, if you will. And it's not just going to be somebody you come in and you win a job, and you're going to be splitting it up between 3 guys in terms of the reps to see. And so you're going to have, if you bring somebody in the winter, you're going to want them to try to win the game, win the competition in the spring, but you also have to allow your current guys to win the competition. And then when you can't guarantee any of those 3 that they are the starter, all 3 hit the portal, and now you finally get Aaron Noland, true freshman starter. Because to me, that is the only way Ohio State is going to have a true freshman starting quarterback is if everybody else goes to the portal, or if all but one guy goes to the portal, then it's just a one-on-one competition.
Yeah, and Nadeem Ahmed says this Aaron Nolan stuff isn't happening. When was the last time Ohio State started a true freshman? He's not the answer. Last time Ohio State started a true freshman would have been Braxton Miller, right, in 2011?
Aside from the Kyle McCord.
Well, yeah, yes. Yeah, Kyle McCord started the Akron game in 2021. That's right. But the last time Ohio State started for a meaningful stretch was Braxton Miller, who was rather notably not going up against a bunch of former 5-stars in the quarterback room in 2011. So, yeah, that's not really a great And can I remind you about the 2011 Ohio State-Illinois game where Ohio State won the game? That's the good news. Completing, ready? One pass all game. 1 for 4 for 17 yards and a touchdown to Jake Stoneburner, if my memory serves correctly on all of that, which I remember watching that game, and no thank you. Do not need another one of those. Thank you very much.
And the thing is, that was the middle of the season. And that's where things were. They went, I'm just looking at this now, as a team, they went 6 games completing under 10 passes in a row. And that was broken up. They completed 12 passes in a loss to Michigan State, but that was the only game in a stretch of 9 games where they completed over 10 passes.
Was that the Michigan State game that ended up 14-7, but only because they scored a touchdown on the last play of the game on a Hail Mary?
It was 10-7.
10-7, that's
Michigan
it. Yes,
State.
10-7, yes. Yeah. It was 10-0 for the first 59 minutes and 50 seconds or so. Yeah, that bringing in a true freshman quarterback, like, you could be as talented as you want. A true freshman quarterback is a true freshman quarterback. And that's why when we're having the Dante Moore conversation about UCLA, his numbers were not good. He might end up being great. More insightful quarterback evaluators than me are going to have to be the ones who figure that out. His numbers were not great because that's what a true freshman quarterback looks like. So that's why, when people were banging the drum for Lincoln Kienholz to play this year, it was like, no. He might be great next year. Aaron Nolan might be great in 2025. You do not want a true freshman quarterback that is asking way too much of someone way too young and way too early in their careers. Eddie wants to know. Go ahead.
Well, and the time previous to Braxton Miller was obviously Terrell Pryor in 2008. And the saying about true freshman quarterbacks that start, they'll lose you at least one game. And I think it was the Penn State game where he was fourth down or whatever, had an opening on a carry and fumbled the ball and lost that game. that would have been a win. But you need a situation where the incumbent, John Beckman was just running for his life in that early season, and it still took 4 games until it was the 4th game of the season, I think, when Terrell Pryor took over. And for Braxton Miller, it was probably around game 3 or 4 as well when he took over for Joe Bauserman. So you need a unique situation to start a true freshman quarterback.
Well, and I think both of those also came immediately after losses, where it was right after the USC game in 2008, where Ohio State went out to LA and lost 35-3. And it was kind of like, okay, so the Todd Beckman thing's not working anymore. And 2011, they lost to Miami, and I think that was probably the last Bauserman start until Braxton Miller hurt his ankle, and then, it looked okay at times in 2011 with Braxton Miller, and they were up 24-6 or 27-6 or something like that in Lincoln, and then Braxton Miller hurt his ankle, a passing chart was born, and Ohio State finished 6-7 that year. So, the true freshman thing, it always looks great on paper. Well, look at how many stars are next to his name. True freshman quarterbacks pretty much always look like true freshman quarterbacks at times. So, if you're willing to accept that, that's fine. But I'm going to need you to sign your name on the paper saying you're okay with that, because you won't be okay with it later. It takes time. That's how developmental positions work. Eddie says, question.
Do you remember what Joe Bauserman's numbers were against Miami in that loss?
I don't. I remember. What did they lose? 24-6 or something like that. Mm-hmm. And mm-hmm. I remember that was a game where I remember Luke Fickell punted on a 4th and short when it was like, you very obviously need to go for it to try and win the game, and he punted on 4th and short, and it was like, oh, okay. So you very clearly know you're not winning this game. Okay, cool. I don't remember. I'm going to say 6 of 18 for 63 yards, no touchdowns, and 1 interception.
Close, Tom. Very, very close. He was 2 of 14 for 13 yards.
Oh, wow.
And that was better than his Nebraska performance.
Whoa. So I think we've all gotten a nice dose of perspective here on what quarterback play can look like and has looked like in the past. This is like when we had the Brett Powers 1993 Michigan conversation last week or 2 weeks ago, where it was, 3 of 6 for 20 yards and 3 interceptions. Like, well, none of his passes hit the ground. All day. What a day. Eddie says, question is, does Ryan Day hold a press conference in regard to McCord transferring? The answer is no. You said you put in a request for a comment, and we have not yet gotten a comment. Is that correct?
Correct. I did. I sent a request for a comment or a quote or, something from Ryan Day about this. And I was non-committal on getting an answer. So we will see. So Will J saying Dillon Gabriel is now in the portal. Tom is looking that up. My thing about Dillon Gabriel is that he's left-handed, and so I realize Aaron Noland is left-handed as well, but Dillon Gabriel has obviously put up numbers wherever he's gone. I don't know if he has the arm strength for Ohio State. They like to stretch, throw downfield. He's fine at the short stuff, and he's a very efficient guy, and he can run, obviously, and I know people like that fact because they've been missing it, although I will remind people when they had a running quarterback, they really wanted a throwing quarterback. And so I think what you want is results. You want wins over Michigan. You want national championships. And however that gets done, you're totally fine with it. But, can you confirm,
yeah,
Tom?
He is in the portal. I was just pulling up his stats. Completed 69% of his passes this year, 3,660 yards, 30 touchdowns, 6 picks. So not that dissimilar from Kyle McCord's numbers. Ran for 373 yards, 4 yards a carry, 12 touchdowns on the ground. So, he's like fancy dog Kyle McCord, basically with a little more running. But that was his 5th year of college, not his. And his 4th year of starting? Basically 5th year of starting. He started 3 games at UCF in 2021. Was he the one? He's the one who had that really bad leg injury, right?
Yeah.
No. I'm thinking of someone else.
You're
Grayson
right.
Something, but yeah.
Well, not Grayson McCall. It was still
no.
There's so many quarterbacks, and they're all very similar, like UCF, Coastal Carolina. This is he has been around. Because he was he with Scott Frost at UCF? 2019? No, he couldn't have been.
No. It was after that, but because Frost's first year at Nebraska was 18, I believe. Because 17 was their national championship season. But yeah, it was not a Scott Frost quarterback there, but has been good, but has in 5 years of being a college quarterback has never completed 70% of his passes. He threw for 7 more yards this season than he did as a freshman in 2019. He threw for 1 more touchdown and 1 fewer pick than he did as a freshman in 2019. And yeah, he's playing in a different conference now, but that's not, if you are a 5th-year starting quarterback in college, you're not an NFL quarterback. And Ryan Day is looking for NFL quarterbacks. That's sort of the expectation there. Grayson McCall, Dylan Gabriel is someone who, like, Nebraska, you want to go spend some money and you can't get Kyle McCord? Sure, go get Dylan Gabriel. That will increase your chances of making a bowl. Rico's highlight says Cameron Ward or Grayson McCall should start next year and teach Aaron Nolan. I mean, if you do that, we think we've had the Cam Ward discourse enough at this point. Grayson McCall, same thing. He's in the Dylan Gabriel camp for me. First of all, the offense that he's been running, that Grayson McCall's been running under, former Coastal Carolina coach now at...
Jamie Chadwell.
Jamie Chadwell, thank you. He's basically running modern triple option, more or less, which is a wildly different offense than what Ohio State has run the last few years. So, I think people are just kind of looking at long-time starting quarterbacks. None of these really fit the profile of an Ohio State, especially Ryan Day kind of quarterback. They're all good, and I think those are guys who could go somewhere and really make a positive impact on whatever their new program is. I don't know that either of those guys are the guys to get you from, we only won 11 games during the regular season this year, to, okay, this is the guy to get you to 12 wins this season. Maybe. I think the number of quarterbacks that can get you from 11 wins to 12 wins is a lot shorter than, I think that list is a lot shorter than most people think it is. Because there are plenty of quarterbacks. You could be a top 20 quarterback and get an Ohio State team to 10 wins, maybe 11 wins. I think the number of quarterbacks that can go on the road and win at Michigan and go on the road and win at Oregon next year. I think that number is smaller than people think.
Yeah, Purgatory Buck saying Mackenzie Milton was the
injury. Yeah.
I'm with you. These quarterbacks, these 5th-year, 6th-year guys, if they were NFL quarterbacks, they'd be in the NFL. And so, do you want, as an Ohio State fan, somebody who is not an NFL quarterback right now in terms of coming in to be a 5th-year, 6th-year guy? Because if you're not at that point yet, do you think you're going to get there at Ohio State? And if the standard is first-round quarterback, Heisman finalist or whatever, these guys aren't necessarily first-rounders. And if they were, they would already be gone. So I don't think they come to Ohio State and become first-rounders. And a lot of these guys, they're not the biggest arms. They're efficient, and they do what they do in their offenses. And it has been amazing to watch Grayson McCall come way back down to earth in 1 year, Tom, 1 year under Tim Beck. I do not know how this guy continues to get hired, and he should be kept away from quarterbacks. You should keep your gasoline tank away from your fireplace. These two should never be together, and yet he is a quarterback's coach by nature, and it's baffling to me. Now, Will J with Riley Leonard, Will Howard fit. Those guys are who we already have. I would love to see Riley Leonard and Ohio State's offense, but I have only seen bits and pieces of him, and I just like his toughness and his grit. And obviously he can run, he can throw. I don't know how accurate he is. I don't know that he can do what you need him to do, and it already sounds like he is bought and paid for to Notre Dame, based on some of the speculation coming in. So
based on the fact that it was reported as a done deal before the transfer portal opened. What do you sir? What are you implying?
Well, I'm implying the same thing happened with Sam Hartman, Tom.
Oh, oh. So he's going to be a Heisman contender in week 3 and then largely forgotten by week 6?
Yes,
Wow, okay.
Yes. Probably injured.
I'm not sure he's handsome enough to be Sam Hartman Part 2. We do need to get to this. Timmy Umpleby, don't let this distract you from the fact that the committee screwed over Florida State. Sure did. Sure did.
No. Jordan Travis screwed Jordan Travis.
Did you see the tweet from Jordan Travis where he said, I wish I had broken my leg earlier in the season? Like, that's where we are, like, in terms of how stupid this discourse is. Like, if only I had broken my leg sooner. I think one thing that people are not seeing in this whole thing is the real negative impact that this is going to have on the sport of college football on the whole. Like, this has been a pretty clear, like, you win a power league, unbeaten, you're in the playoff. You don't get to get jumped because we project this is going to happen. Go back a week and look at all the people projecting, Florida State has no chance in the playoff without this quarterback. Go back a week and look at who those people were projecting to win the Pac-12 championship game. I will say I expected Oregon to win. I didn't think Washington, and guess what? Washington won the same damn game twice in a row. I mean, they beat them exactly the same way. I don't think you can project looking forward. I don't think you can look at point spreads moving forward. I think you got to go like, look, they won all the games in front of them. Alabama, yeah, they beat Georgia. They look like absolute unwashed butt the week before against Auburn. You're looking at the Auburn game and Auburn having to muff a punt and also blow a 4th and 31 in the final minute and going, this is an Alabama team that absolutely deserves, one of the best in the country, absolutely deserves to be in the playoff. Like, you can't look like that and then act like it's your birthright to get in. I thought that was really probably a significant net negative for the sport moving forward. Like, yeah, it probably gives you a better Rose Bowl game. If you watch the reaction from the Michigan team, they weren't real happy with that news. Didn't hear anyone yelling "bet" on that video, Tony. Maybe the audio got dubbed. I'm sure it was just someone in the back, and I just couldn't hear them. But they didn't seem thrilled with that. But you're also like. So the next time, should Florida State just say that Jordan Travis is week to week? And now, sorry, well, we expect we might have him back for the playoff, and then you get in. Like, okay, is that the lesson we're supposed to learn here? That you should just we'll just lie about injuries and that because if we don't lie about injuries, we're going to get left out even though we won all of our games. Like, I understand the argument that Alabama gives you a better game. Tough crap. Sorry you lost by 2 scores at home to Texas, but sorry.
Well, winning a conference championship will mean more in the expanded playoffs, so I don't think that's really an issue anymore. And you could say Jordan Travis is day-to-day, but everybody saw the angle of his leg. So
right, but if it's not an injury that was like a very obvious injury, if he tore up his knee and it's like, oh well, did he tear his ACL or is I don't know, he's getting treatment right now. Like, if it wasn't that kind of injury, like very obviously that particular one, yes, but in the next case he tears his ACL and maybe you can put him do the Dennis Dixon, put him in a brace and see what happens.
Well, but again, you win your conference and you're going to be in, essentially. So I think I don't really have a problem with what the committee did because you look at the team that they were without Jordan Travis, and in their last 2 games, 224 yards of total offense against Florida, 219 yards of total offense against Louisville. Like, this is what they were measured against. This is not a 13-0 Florida State team. This is a 3-0 Florida State team that they're looking at essentially with the new non-Jordan Travis quarterbacks, and the committee obviously looking for a better game than what Florida State was going to give them. This was a perfect opportunity for the annual first round bye for the number 1 team. And so when that didn't happen, but I had said on several shows, I thought Alabama was going to jump Florida State because Florida State, a 9-point win at Florida, I think that's good for just about anybody. 10-point win against Louisville should be good, but they didn't look good in either of those wins. They didn't look productive. Ohio State didn't necessarily need 59-0 in 2014 against Wisconsin, but they needed to look good, and they did. If they had won 16-6 or 20-4 to 15, I don't know that they're in the playoffs, but they also had a loss. They weren't undefeated. This was just a very unique year. I do wonder, as I've said before, the committee didn't have to worry about setting a precedent this year. I do wonder if this was not the last year of the 4-team playoff, would they have stuck with the undefeated team? And I'm not sure, because they had been hinting that it's not about deserving, it's about the best team. And they were pretty emphatic about that a week ago. And I think part of that was so that they could get out of the Florida State thing and just lay the groundwork for that.
And, the next year, the top 4 conference champions get a first-round bye. Well, the top 4 conference champions this year would have been Michigan, Washington, Texas, Alabama, under the committee's rankings. So therefore, Florida State would have had to play. If Jordan Travis was coming back in a month, you have to play a game without him. Then, I just think it's really not a great look. And I get all the arguments, but I'm going to need to see someone to show their work that they've been right about all their picks. They know all of the things, because the same ESPN crew that had 3 of 5 people on game day pick Iowa to beat Michigan, which, what is then say, well, everyone knows what would happen. Do you? I mean, what? How does if it's Michigan, how does Michigan's offensive line hold up against Florida State's pass rush? How confident are you that Michigan is absolutely? I mean, I don't think Florida State's scoring a lot of points. Are you super confident that Michigan's whole? I mean, you would bet your life, you would bet the lives of your loved ones that Michigan holds up just fine against that Florida State pass rush and beats Florida State to the point where it's playing this game would be an enormous waste of time. Because I got to tell you, I thought the same thing about TCU last year, and I know how that went.
Well, TCU had an offense last year that could make things interesting. I think Florida State versus Michigan is probably 16-3 Michigan, and that's assuming there are no turnovers for Michigan that give Florida State a short field and something fluky like that.
And that's entirely possible. But Florida State kind of did the thing you're supposed to do. If you lose, as soon as you lose a game, it's out of your control. If there's 4 other undefeated major conference champions, it's out of your control. But I have a big issue with how they did that. But that is neither here nor there. The water is under the bridge. The terrified gasp is out of the Michigan lungs in the room watching that. That is one of the funnier videos. One of the funnier videos that I have seen. I saw someone earlier talking about how we had banned them from our chat or something, and they got a 48-hour suspension. You've got to really be working pretty hard to get banned out of our chat, to the point where multiple people are complaining about what a jerk you're being. So I've got to ban this guy real quick, who's up on the screen right now.
Oh, no. If I super chat that, can I stay?
Yes, if you super chat that, yes, you can stay.
I'll Venmo you. That way you won't lose 70% or 30% to YouTube. How's that sound?
Yeah.
So
I think we're caught up. Only an hour and 47 minutes to start our Monday.
So what else is new? The thing
we will have to do a whole nother show, because there were 3 other guys who went in the transfer portal on Saturday night. That's probably going to be Tuesday's morning show. We'll do that sometime on Monday afternoon. But I texted Tony at 6 a.m. Hey, we got to do a show on the 3 defensive backs who transferred, and then all this happened. Oops, clicked on the wrong one there. Blake says, imagine Kyle going to Michigan for a year. I mean, if J.J. McCarthy leaves, and I don't know that's J.J. McCarthy leaving. What's going to be the primary deciding factor in whether J.J. McCarthy leaves? His NFL draft position, his opportunity to earn a certain amount in NIL, with a 1 more year thing they did with Blake Corum and everyone this year, or what might be coming down the track for Michigan NCAA wise in the next 9 months? What's the primary deciding factor there if you're JJ McCarthy?
Well, and I don't know that they can. JJ, I wouldn't be shocked if JJ McCarthy stays just because he seems to really like it at Michigan, and he could make money in NIL. Keeping Blake Corum via NIL is much different because he's not a first or second round player; he's a lower round player, so he probably made more from NIL than or commensurate as what he would have made in the NFL. Whereas I don't necessarily know that they can. Well, I guess $2 million or something like that could keep JJ McCarthy around, but I also think he just really likes playing at Michigan. But he's not going to want to play at Michigan if the NCAA is bringing a hammer down, and it just depends on, is that happening next year? Is it happening in 2025? Quote mentor talking about Alex Orji would be next up. They would not want Kyle. Alex Orji, I thought we've said this, and we don't need to revisit the fantastic job by Sharon Moore to bring him in when he did. I think some of that obviously is because JJ McCarthy's a little bit banged up, so they wanted to do some running. I have no idea what Alex Orji can do as a passer, but we've seen this very often where you bring a guy in who could run and you just use him as a change of pace, and then over the next spring or whatever, then he will develop as that passer.
I just got to punch this one up real quick just because of the combination of the name and the Ohio State opponent. Former Missouri quarterback Brad Smith.
Thank you.
Arguably former Missouri quarterback Brad Smith. Excited to see Devin and Lincoln treat Mizzou as a glorified scrimmage. I think Ryan Day talked on Sunday about the fact that, winning the game is the first job. I think, honestly, functionally for Ohio State, what is the difference between being 12-1 with a Cotton Bowl win over Missouri and 11-2 with a Cotton Bowl loss against Missouri when everyone knows, okay, you're playing without 6 opt-outs, say, whatever the number ends up being. Like, if it's me, this is the first scrimmage of the 2024 season. I don't know if that's how Ryan Day is going to treat it, but this is a month of development, a month of practice. This is 15 practices and a game where you can get a ton of great film on these young guys, figure out what you have, and then if you need to go, this is how you figure out what you need to add in the portal. Because they're going to be active in the portal. They're going to be adding offensive linemen for sure. What else do you need? Do you have your quarterback of the future on this year's team? Boy, is this a great month to figure that out. And then, you want to have the Cam Ward conversation. If Cam or any of the names we've talked about, sure, that's fine. If you don't feel like you have your quarterback of the future on this year's team, great. Go find someone in the portal, Dante Moore, whoever it is. But I think you got to figure that out this month.
Yeah, and you need to see both of them. And I'm with you. There is no difference between 12-1 and 11-2 because you didn't reach. Is the Missouri win going to reach one of their 3 goals of beating Michigan, winning the Big Ten, or winning the national championship? No. So this is a season that needs to build on the next, and that's what I asked Ryan Day on Sunday. How much do you treat this now? We know more now than we do now, but how much do you treat this as the start of next season? And yeah, they want to go out the right way, and you want to send the seniors out or whatever, and that's all well and good. The seniors had an opportunity to send themselves out the right way, and it didn't go so well for them, and not that we're throwing them under the bus or anything like that, but, the season is what it is at this point now. So you definitely, if you already have players moving on, then I think it's okay for the coaches to do that while also still trying to win. It's not like you're throwing Devin Brown and Lincoln Kienholz out there with bad plays or bad program or whatever. You want them to be successful, and you're going to have players that can help them be successful. And I did have somebody ask me, with Day saying they were not expecting any opt-outs or whatever, the way he phrased that, somebody asked me, does that mean maybe Marvin Harrison Jr. comes back? And I said no. And what Day said about people opting out has no bearing on whether people are going to opt out. This is just coaches saying, we expect to have everybody, and knowing that you're not going to have everybody. And so, this is a game. It's an exhibition game. Bowl stats didn't used to count until, I don't know, like 2001 or something like that, 1998. Who knows? They've been exhibition games forever. The bowl games are now more meaningless than ever with the playoff, and maybe more meaningful to coaches looking for wanting that extra win rather than a loss on their Wikipedia page.
Yeah, I think the non-playoff bowl games have never been less relevant in terms of, what does this mean? For years and years and years, it was, well, the SEC wins the New Year's Day bowl games against the Big Ten more often than they lose them, and that means they're the best conference. And it only takes a year of the Big Ten winning more of those games against the SEC, where it's like, well, these are more exhibition games, and now especially what with the price of gasoline these days. I mean, you can't really take any of this too seriously, but they're the same people who are banging the drum when they're trying to sell you the opportunity to watch the bowl games are going to tell you that it doesn't matter if something else if they don't get the result they expect. So
I'm seeing reports in the chat trying to check.
You and I are looking for the same thing. Yes, no. Any reports of any reports of
just Twitter trolls making that. So relax for now.
Yes. Yeah.
It used to be a better day when you knew who to trust on Twitter, and basically the answer now is don't trust anybody and then verify.
Yeah. Yes. I think we have all learned we've all learned a valuable lesson over the last few weeks and months. As boy, a lot of people with 150 followers breaking news today, which remains unconfirmed by anyone who would be in a position to confirm that. So,
but again, I want to thank Brad Smith, one of the all-time great Missouri quarterbacks, all-time great Big 12 quarterbacks. If we could maybe get a question from Michael Bishop at some point, that would be pretty cool. Anybody else that we would like to hear from?
Todd Reesing. If we're doing Big 12 quarterback chat, Todd Reesing. What was Mark Mangino really like? Because I've heard stories, and I would love to know.
I'd just like to hear Todd Reesing talk about that 2007 season and how amazing it was. And boy, that would be a guy. Todd Reesing, if he had 1 year of eligibility remaining, and this was like after that 2007 year, he could have done pretty well in the portal, and he would have been, this little 5'9" guy. Like, I want $1.75 million, and you're going to give it to me because I'm Todd freaking Reesing. And people have been like, okay, you can run our offense.
Yeah, that's there are a lot of eras of college football I would love to see played out with the current system in place, but yeah.
It is, Tom, it is now a new era of established quarterbacks leaving big programs. Dylan Gabriel, Kyle McCord, like when we saw Caleb Williams leave Oklahoma, he went with his coach. So that was different. Now you're seeing productive starting quarterbacks leaving programs that you don't expect them to leave. And now, to me, at this point, can you expect anybody to stay? Like, you're going to have to keep your quarterbacks because there is a lot of money going on out there where you're talking $1.5, $2 million. And if you're not going to give me that, then somebody else will. And why won't you give me that? Why aren't you loyal to me? Why don't you like me?
Speaking of why don't you like me, Jordan Kapler says, trust me, trust the process, and trust Tony and Kevin. Don't trust a certain someone that wears a dumb hat with a whale on it. Jordan apparently unaware that this is the letter B and not a whale. Speaking of trustworthy sources, I don't know. I'm not sure. Thank you for the super chat. We appreciate that. But I've quite maybe get your eyes checked. I don't know.
Don't besmirch Jordan Kappa. He's talking about your Hartford hat and your Hartford stuff. Jordan, I apologize for that. Tom trying to mislead the audience. Thank you for the super chat. Thank you for the honesty that you've always approached this show with, this and both of us and even Kevin. I do appreciate that. Thank you very much.
I can't wait for this time next year when he is on team Tony's the worst. I am so excited. I assume this is like the Chinese lunar calendar where it's just you go in a circle. It's like, oh, next year will be the year of the tiger, and then last year, of course, with it being an anti-Kevin year, the year of the rat.
I was going to say thank you, Tom. Very good.
All right, we have pretty much approached 2 hours. Right. I don't think anyone else is imminently going to transfer for Ohio State, at least anyone that we would break in immediately. Yes, Sue says, woke up to this, shocked, really? Yeah, I mean, it was, I would not have been utterly shocked by this if it happened after the spring game.
Mm-hmm.
You know, happening now is weird to me because I think you have the opportunity to play the bowl game again. You know, earn the job. I'm surprised that it happened now. I'm not shocked that it happened. Here's an interesting suggestion: McCord to Colorado. LOL. I think Shedeur Sanders has another year, so I don't think the Colorado quarterback job is open. I saw that and I was like, oh, that's interesting. But yeah, I think Shedeur Sanders has another year, and I think they're going to spend all their money in the on the offensive line anyway. Mitchell Carter says Chase Daniel. There is a great former Big 12 quarterback. Is he still an NFL backup? Like, he had the best gig in the NFL where he had played for like 10 years and earned like tens of millions of dollars and thrown like 14 passes in his career. Like, just incredible dollars per like minute worked vibes there.
He looks at Chad Henne. He's like, dude, why do you work so much? Like, you need to calm down. Shedeur Sanders is actually draft eligible, but I'm not sure that he's actually going to go. I'm just looking at a CFBstats.com page where 2021 would have been his first year at Jackson State. And then 2022 is missing. So 2023 is junior year.
Money Silver says Mizzou might make McCord look like Tom Brady. Missouri, I was pulling this up at one point, and now I have to find the right tab. But they were well, Missouri's at Brady Cook.
Yeah.
No, I think they mean he means in the bowl game. And I was just pulling up some of the comparable stats, and now I can't find the tab. But Missouri was like 23rd in the nation in opponent adjusted yards per pass, like relative performance yards per pass. So, you know, not an incredible passing defense, but not a bad, you know, this is not like 2021 Michigan State level passing defense. So I don't think Ohio State's going to put up 600 yards passing or something in the Cotton Bowl.
Yeah, Missouri, the number 79 pass efficiency defense this year, which I think is good news for then Lincoln Kienholz and Devin Brown. And boy, we are going to talk about that a bunch over the next few weeks, what to expect. And again, we won't necessarily talk to Ryan Day. We're scheduled to talk to players in not this week, but next week, middle of next week. I would assume that we're going to get Ryan Day for a little bit of that just because of what is happening. And also because that's not the last thing that is going to happen. And so I will probably be able to touch base with him then. And that's going to be the first time that we talk to him. I don't know that he's doing his radio show anymore now that that there's a break in action.
Yeah. So, no.
So Tom, are we good? 2 hours in? Is this?
I think we're good. Yeah, we are. Unless
we got to go prepare for
we're
some
good.
other breaking news.
Yeah, we better wrap up this show before we have to do another show. So yeah, we're caught up on Super Chat. So thank you everyone for joining us on this lovely and somewhat surprising Monday morning breaking news podcast.
Yeah, we should do an 8 to 10 a.m. show every morning, Tom. Just wake up and just hit the ground running. It's a great way to start your day and be productive throughout the rest of the day. It's like the chocolate donuts of the Wheaties of the well-balanced breakfast.
We would need we would need a wacky morning show name. It's Tommy and the Gooch. That would be. I mean, I think we need. We're workshopping it, but I mean. I think if we're gonna do this, I think we need a wacky morning show name.
Don't you dare try to establish nicknames as we're leaving the show. That will not work. I will cut this out as we go. We're gonna end the show right now. So thank you all for tuning in. Thank you for hitting the thumbs up there, and thank you for subscribing if you have not yet done that. Feel free to find us at BuckeyeHuddle.com at all times. Become a member there. It is a great way to support what we do. So thank you all for tuning in, and we'll talk to you guys later.